Yo, what's up guys? White Strikes Mayhem is in a couple of days, and I wanted to make a video with one goal in mind, and that's to get people who normally don't want to PvP or are a little afraid of PvP out into PvP with a clear idea of what they need to compete with everyone else. We're going to be going over all sorts of things like playstyle, abilities, fun class combinations, things to help you survive, how to control your surroundings on the battlefield. I'll be leaving links to my builds in the description below, all subclassing and up to date for this White Strikes Mayhem. And remember guys, you die in PvP, it's just respawn. You don't lose anything. You keep your gold, you keep all the gear that you had on, you're good to go. Just get back out there and try again. Let's get into it guys. So to get into PvP, the first thing you're going to need is to be honest with yourself and your capabilities. And reaction time. You 100% need to pick a build that matches your playstyles and combat capabilities. PvP is all about burst damage and survivability. With this playstyle, the slower you react, the more difficulties you may have with certain builds. So let's make sure we aren't getting too amped up on all those 1vx videos out there from people who've been playing PvP since beta, and we're being honest with ourselves. And it's totally okay. You can still be good at PvP. Just don't expect to be the next rank 1 Tales of Tribute player anytime soon. Here's my breakdown of skill lines to mix and match and some of the playstyles I've been enjoying, both fast and slow. Alright, so sorcerer is up first guys. This class holds all sorts of potential with the skill trees it offers. For starters, Streak with its insane mobility and its passives for sustain and its potential for insane burst damage, and of course the pets for all those fun insane zoo builds you guys are seeing everyone out there running. The only real thing it's missing is a reliable burst heal like many of the other classes, but with subclassing we can fix that. Next up is Nightblade, and it has one of the most sought after skill lines with assassination, but its sustain and potential with siphoning skill line is so strong as well. This one has potential for the necessity of fast reaction time as well as not, with the fact that it has the kit to also be a strong ranged attacker along with stealth. Moving on to the Dragonknight, consider this guy a dominant warrior class playstyle. It also has one of the most highly sought after skill lines, Ardent Flame, high pressure damage and increase to flame and poison damage, and sustain from that flame and poison damage with its passives. But it also has some of the strongest defensive skill lines as well, with draconic power and top tier CC and immovability. Next up is the Templar, and it's one of the classes I always recommend to people with its insane survivability and crazy sustain it offers, with some of the most necessary buffs in the game. Basically, just hit a couple buttons and breathe for a second. You have time to think about your next move. Next up is the Warden. This is like Templar, but buffed up. Not only does it offer you all the buffs you need in one class with its insane single target healing for yourself and allies, you also get a major resolve AoE and one of the strongest AoE ultimates in the game, Northern Storm. It's like Destro Alt's bigger brother. Then we have Necromancer. And everyone has always downplayed Necro in PvP or just in general, but there are some skill lines in this class's kit that just cannot be slept on, but they'll definitely put you to sleep forever if you're not careful. And that's the Gravelord skill line with its insane damage from the Blast Bones and its amazing passives it offers in the skill line. The potential for delayed damage with subclassing is on another planet this meta. And finally, the Arcanist. This class has a lot to offer with its crazy buffs to status effects, as well as amazing AoE damage potential, and the potential to be very tanky with its shields that it offers, the boosts from Herald of the Tome skill line with its passives is nothing to shake a stick at either. Okay, Now that you have an idea of what you want to mix and match, let's get into it. Either you like to sit in the front lines and trade blows with your mortal enemy, then let's mix and match a Dragonknight and a Templar. Or let's say you like to sit back and run away when somebody looks at you like you're the gingerbread man. Then let's mix and match a Nightblade and a sorcerer. So now we're going to set up our builds with PvP in mind, regardless of what builds you have and your level. So here are the basics of what you have to do to be successful in PvP. When you start PvPing, I highly recommend that you set up for survivability, which comes in many forms. A lot of people only think, let's get those resistances up. But you also have flat damage reduction, such as major protection and minor protection, as well as a few others, which you can get from many things. Northern Storm is one for major protection. Monomyth also gives you major protection. Ice Fortress, the armor buff from Warden, gives you minor protection. Templar passive gives you minor protection, as well as Explosive Charge from Templar, which gives you major protection. Contingency gives you a nice 8% damage reduction, and Vampire Stage 3 gives you up to 15% damage reduction. And Torque of the Last Ayleid King gives you a flat 15% damage reduction as well. That's its own special buff. These are just some of the ones I like to use and are very accessible. And of course, you have Sustain as well, which we can dive into more later. But like I said, these are ways to get some flat damage reduction. But your resistances do give you damage reduction as well. You will always want to make sure you're keeping your major and minor resolve up. This will give you at least 10k resistances, and just major resolve alone is a 6k resistance boost, which equates to something like 7 to 8% damage reduction. I recommend shooting for at least 30,000 resistances because there are a lot of debuffs out there that are going to take those resistances right away from you. All right, so that leads us on to the next thing that has to do with survivability, and that is Sustain. There are a lot of ways you can build into this. The easiest ways are, for starters, craftable gear like Wretched Vitality. Wretched Vitality, this is an amazing set that I highly recommend whether you're new or a veteran. This craftable set gives you 1 line of Magicka recovery and 1 line of stamina recovery, plus a line of weapon and spell damage, but its 5-piece set gives you up to 390 Magicka and stamina recovery, which is an amazing amount of sustain. Then you have food. My all-time favorite food is Orzorga's Smoked Bear Haunch. This food grants you 4,312 health, 406 health recovery, and 369 Magicka and stamina recovery. So just Wretched Vitality and Orzorga's alone give you 888 mag and stam recovery. I also recommend a monster set called Roxa. This gives you 70 base recovery to all stats and up to 310 total when you're in combat long enough to acquire the full effects. There are also 2 champion points that I would recommend you running as well. And they're both in the red fitness tree right here. We have Sustained by Suffering and we have Survival Instincts. Make sure you have those 2 on when you go out into PvP. Also, another massive sustain boost is going to come from Restoration Potions. You can get these from Cyrodiil vendor for alliance points, and this is going to give you major intellect and major endurance, which is going to increase your mag and stam recovery by 30%. You may also use Tri-Stat recovery glyphs for jewelry. But that's too much details for now.
So have you ever been watching someone PvP or PvPing yourself and you see someone moving so fast in the game that you thought they were hacking? Well, who knows, honestly? Maybe they are. But here's how you can be really fast also. And our next big survivability tip is mobility. You have access to many versions of Major and Minor Expedition, which increase your movement speed, Major Expedition by 30% and Minor Expedition by 15%. Here are some examples of how I do it. So with my Nightblade, I use Hurricane and the Bow passive. This gives me Major and Minor Expedition Hurricane will give me minor expedition, and the bow passive when I dodge roll gives me 4 seconds of major expedition. And this build that I call the Guardian, I use wings from the Warden skill tree and concealed weapon from the Nightblade skill tree. But you can also get these from gear sets and potions, as well as swift jewelry traits, which with purple give you 6% and gold gives you 7%, as well as the red fitness tree champion point slottable celerity, which gives you a 10% speed boost. But before you go too crazy, remember there is a sprint speed cap at 200%, which can be seen on your character screen. So the most common ways of getting major and minor expedition with subclassing are going to be Hurricane and Race Against Time or Warden Wings, which also give you snare removal and prevents you from being locked down and killed. And this brings us on to CCs and Immobilizations. So when you get CC'd and you break free, you will consume stamina doing this. And this will give you crowd control immunity for 7 seconds. At least it's supposed to. This will be seen as a visual with a swirling wind effect around your feet. But just because you are immune to crowd control doesn't mean you're still safe. You can still be immobilized right after you're crowd controlled. And you either need to use a snare removal, like Race Against Time, or you need to roll dodge, which will also consume stamina again. This is why sustain is very high up on my survivability ranking. But you can also just subclass into sorcerer and streak away to your heart's content, or until you don't have enough magicka to do so. Okay, so now we have armor buffs and damage reduction buffs with some sustain, and we're moving like Usain Bolt out there on the battlefields of Cyrodiil. Now, let's make sure you're healing yourself. This isn't your raid prog group where you can blame the healer for dying, when we all know you were standing in that red circle for just a little too long because you were trying to get to the top of those DPS charts. For the love of Talos, make sure you have an add-on that you can put your health bar somewhere you can see, like LUI extended, or just turn it on in the in-game settings under nameplates. Keeping track of your potion and your defensive ult that you have on your back bar, as well as your health bar, is something that you should work on. Try to treat it like looking in the side mirrors when you're driving your car. Not really paying attention, but you do look sometimes. And hey, you're still alive. So it should work in a video game as well. The potion will give you a flood of resources, allowing you to survive a little bit longer, which could get you to the defensive ultimate, which will also help you survive a few more seconds. You just can never know. Allies could show up, or the enemies could just get bored. But these are the little things that all add up to keeping you alive on the battlefield. If you're not aware of some of the greatest sources of burst healing, here are the ones you should use with subclassing. In the current state of the game, Nightblade, Healthy Offering, Warden, Polar Wind, Templar, Honor the Dead, Dragonknight, Coagulating Blood. These are just the ones I recommend that you add to your build if you want to have the best chance of surviving, especially when you combine these heals with the most optimal form of minor resolve. And this is Resolving Vigor. From the assault line, just don't go getting too comfortable because there is a lot of damage out there. So whenever you start taking some damage, make sure you keep Resolving Vigor rolling and hit that burst heal to pop your health to full. Turn on your visual cues and don't get tunnel visioned. Now, remember how we talked about CCs being used on you. Now, let's talk about how you want to use them on the enemy. The best ways to use it are to either drain the enemy's resources, stun to run away, go back to having fun somewhere else, or preparing them for a burst combo. You can either load them up with damage over time, or use it with that burst combo you've been saving up for just this moment. A common mistake that a lot of rookie players make is simply running in and stunning immediately. What you want to do is save that for when you're either in need to reposition, or to pressure the enemy's resources, or to go in for that killing blow. Here are some of the best CC abilities if you don't know. Templar, Binding Javelin, Dragonknight Fossilize, and Talons for an AoE immobilization. Nightblade Mass Hysteria, that's an AoE CC, Sorcerer Streak, and the Warden Charm. Here's my favorite CC combination. On the front bar, I'm rocking Dual Wield. I set up my combo by hitting Shulks and readying my contingency. Then I swap to my back bar with the Ice Staff and use Lotus Fan to charge my target and pull them in with Rush of Agony. And the Lotus activates my Warden Charm
from contingency, and not only did I just pull the enemies, now I've also locked them down with an AoE CC, while they're all taking massive AoE damage. If you want to see the whole build and all of its other details, check out the build video down in the description below. Another quick thing to touch on is you need a source of major brutality and sorcery. You can get this from potions or skills from any offensive skill tree that you've picked. I like to recommend the Betty Netch from the Warden because not only does it give you major brutality and sorcery, it gives you a cleanse, sustain of your choosing, and a 5% damage increase for 5 seconds if nothing is cleansed. You also want to try to get major savagery for your crit, which you can get from potions as well, or skills like Fighter's Guild, Skill Line, Flames of Oblivion, or Shadowy Disguise. But these are just some of the ways you can do it. Now, let's get into gear, because this plays a large role for you with not only the weight passives, but the Undaunted passives as well. So I'll show you here. If you're newer to PvP, you want to start off with one offensive set on the front bar and one defensive set on the back bar. We have Burning Spellweave on the front bar, which can only be activated while you're on the front bar, but the weapon damage does carry over to your back bar, and Daedric Trickery does the same when you swap to your front bar as well. These two are great because they're easy to activate and have some of the strongest effects in the game. Don't forget our mythic and monster set that are also active at all times. I'm using Mark and Ring on this build, which is a very underrated mythic. It gives you damage and armor. And for my monster set, I'm using Balorghs for that insane burst damage potential. Basically, your goal is to find the sweet spot for damage dealt, damage reduction, as well as sustain and healing. And for this particular loadout, here's how it works. Burning Spellweave carries my overall damage, while Balorghs carries my burst damage to the next level. Markin also adds to the overall damage with a hint of survivability. And the constant swapping to my back bar to rebuff is what saves my life by it giving me a random major buff almost every time I'm back there. And one piece trainee for that little extra health. Something else you should take note of is that I have 3 heavy, 3 medium, and 1 light. This is optimal for the armor passives and for the Undaunted 6% increase to your resource pool passives. Now, on to the next thing. People always ask about what stats they should aim for. Let's just start with health before we go getting into why so much weapon damage. Wouldn't more penetration be better? If you're new to PvP with slow reaction times, let's start with 32k plus HP to give you a chance to survive, because I promise you won't have a good time out there with 18k HP in your PvE dummy parsing build. Now it's on to penetration and weapon damage, which, yes, penetration technically gives you the most overall damage per stat, but there are some pretty important things that weapon damage can do that penetration cannot. Not only does it add to your overall damage, but it also adds to your healing as well. And this is a big necessity when it comes to all forms of PvP. This does not at all mean penetration isn't necessary in PvP. It in fact remains the highest damage stat in the game for pure damage. Your goal for penetration is at least 6k flat pen without major breach, because you always want to have a major breach. And with subclassing, it's even easier to have a major and a minor breach with shulks, which will put your penetration well over 10,000. Stats you want to look for are 30,000 plus health with somewhere around 20,000 of each resource pool, 1,500 plus recoveries, 10,000 plus penetration counting major breach, and above 5,500 weapon and spell damage, buffed of course, and somewhere around 25% crit chance. Oh my god, are you still yapping? Yes, I am. Just hold out the rest of the video with me. I want to show you guys some clips in the game to get your creative juices flowing about how you're going to implement this when you get out there and give it a shot. So let's get into line of sight, aka tower humping or rock humping, as they like to say. This is where you find me cutting tight corners, hugging rocks and turns with all the speed boosts I could fit on my build, which limits the amount of damage the enemies can target me with. It's very important to find something you can use for line of sight and survive another couple seconds, because you never know what the enemy will do next. A lot of times before they give up, they forget to keep their buffs up, and it gives you a chance to turn the whole fight around with one well-placed ultimate or burst combo. Alongside of tower humping and buff cycling, make sure you're constantly aware of your surroundings. A lot of times you can see that Nightblade come out of stealth for a brief second right before they get their gank ready on you, which tells you it might not be time to get too far away from your precious rock. Just make sure you're always aware of your nearest safe spot, just in case you get yourself in a sticky situation. Unless you have stealth or streak and can just skedaddle your way on out of there. So, the basics of PvP are fundamentally the opposite of PvE, and I hope I stressed that enough. It's all about short burst windows of damage to put your target down before they have a chance to go defensive and heal through your damage. Unlike PvE, which is all about long-lasting fights, someone healing you and taking the damage for you. And try not to get caught up on someone who's low and just not quite dying to you. You don't want to get baited into using all your resources for them just to turn around and put you in the dirt because you went and used all your resources, saving nothing to heal yourself. You may need to rewrite your brain for this in some ways because, like I said earlier, no one's here to hold your hand. You need to react instantly and be meticulous. One thing you might be used to is buff cycling, but in PvP it has a little more of a consequence rather than losing 1k DPS on your target. You need to constantly be refreshing those buffs even when you're not anticipating combat, because there's always the potential of someone waiting to catch you off guard. Major resolve and minor resolve, major brutality, and so on. Why, you ask? Because when you get attacked unexpectedly, this will save you potentially 3 to 5 seconds global cooldowns, keeping you alive when you would have been hitting respawn and playing Mount Simulator trying to get to the next fight. Make it a habit of cycling your buffs even when you're out finishing up your surveys for the week. Hit that major resolve, that minor resolve, that weapon buff. Learn how to do this without taking your resources so you're prepared for the next time you get caught out on the battlefield. Now, since we figured out it's all about burst damage and how to put the enemy in the dirt, you can do this with a combination of gear and the tips I told you here in this video. I'm going to use my Warblade build as an example. So my goal is to do as much damage in the smallest window possible. This is solo play, and I've made this build to do burst damage, but in an AoE fashion with subclassing. It's like a bomber that has tons of damage reduction and healing. My goal is to get them clumped up by using my Rush of Agony. I pull them in at the right time when they least expect it, and then I let it rip. Alright, that's all for the video. Even though I can make this video 24 hours long, I did my best to clump up some of the most important information about PvP. If you enjoyed this type of content, please leave me a comment below and let me know. YouTube loves that and pushes it out so everyone can see it and join us in PvP. If you want to see me try another build or playstyle, also leave me a comment and hit that thumbs up. It's free for you and it means a lot to me. And come visit me on twitch.tv/Okui, where my mom claims I'm the most talented streamer there is. Thank you guys again, and I can't wait to see you out there on the battlefield for this White Strikes Mayhem.